A few things that went wrong that led to the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility riot in Lucasville, Ohio, was the fact that when the warden had spoke to the inmates, he had the "it's my way or the highway" mentality, which was not a very good mentality to have when speaking with the inmates. Um, because essentially what he was doing was challenging them, telling them we can basically do this the easy way or the hard way. And the inmates, being the inmates, ended up choosing the hard way, which led to the riot. Another mistake that the correctional facility had done was by allowing inmates to have access to private information. In the Lucasville riot article, it talks about how the inmate clerks were the ones who drafted the memo and eventually sent it out. They had first-hand access and knowledge to when and where the lockdown was going to be taking place, so that they can take the skin test for the tuberculosis. And so essentially they ended up spreading the word out to other inmates. And because those inmates didn't like the fact that they were going to be forced to take to do something that they didn't want to do because of the religion, they ended up drafting out and planning out a riot. And so this all could have been done if the inmate clerks did not have access to such private information that allowed them to know what, when, where, and how the swab tests were going to be taken. The policies that should have been prevented, the policies that were set in place that should have prevented the riot from happening. It seems like the only policy that was set into place was the lockdown. One thing that they did was that they were very good about communication. So they had, they tried to seclude the area from the riot spreading. So eventually, when it was happening, they called over the radio, and so other people were going into lockdown during that time. If I was the warden or any agency director, a policy that I would take, a few of them are having training protocols, extensive, at least maybe twice a year. That way, in our correctional officers are prepared and ready for whenever a potential inmate riot might happen. And that includes giving them trainings to look out for clues. And some clues that they can look out for are stockpiling food. Eventually, when a riot happens and it can last for days, there is a lack of access to food. So inmates know that they're going to have to save their food in advance to prepare for whenever trucks don't come in with food. And then also whenever officers pass by them and they're with another inmate and suddenly they stop talking and start acting suspicious, or just even look suspicious, right? That can be another indication. Another thing is hoarding on to dangerous materials such as contraband. So that can be piling excess clothes, stacks of magazines, or any newspapers that may indicate a problem, because essentially they could be hiding any sorts of weapons in there. Any other things that I can do is having informants, having people there in the facility that have firsthand knowledge and information. And so by having an informant, I would discretionally give them, trade information for some type of reward, right? Another policy that I would set into place is having an emergency response team that's dedicated. These are people who are well trained, especially those that are well trained longer than our normal correctional officers, to be prepared for just in case an inmate riot happens, right? So any administrative actions necessary in response to action. Some of them can be, calling 911 for access, especially because the facility in general is, short-staffed compared to those that are, just in general. The corrections is most likely going to be short-staffed and overpopulated with inmates. So it's very hard to have resources. So the best thing to do is to call 911 and tell them, like, hey, there's a riot coming. Can you send backup because, well, you're short-staffed. So it would be nice to have backup because you're limited on resources. And especially they can come in, help out, and essentially help you, take care of the riot before it gets into any further and any more dangerous. Any accommodations or disciplinary actions, of course, if the riot does get to a point where they have hostages, you're going to want to communicate with the inmates to see, like, what can we do to trade off to make sure that no one gets hurt, that everybody's needs are getting met, and so on, right? And then so once that happens, the riot settles down. Obviously, there is going to have to be some disciplinary actions. Some of that might include, like, the ones who were in charge of inciting the riot, giving them a more harsher punishment, right? So obviously, yes, we're going to listen to the needs of the inmates, right? And we are going to accommodate them. However, the ones that incited the riot are going to be the ones that need to be getting the punishment. The ones who maybe it's possible that they get transferred to another prison where there is maybe like solitary confinement, something harsh, because as it is, inciting a riot, especially in a correctional facility, is a harsh crime in itself. And then some things that I would do to restore the aftermath between myself and my staff and inmates is first, like, assisting employees coping with their experience. It's a traumatic experience that someone goes through. Like, they could be beaten, they could have seen their fellow officers beaten, they could have been traumatized, like there's so many things that can happen throughout that time during the riot, and it's a scary experience from what I've read. And so, we just want to help them overcome the trauma with possibility of, like, counselors available, definitely giving them recognition for for not giving up with the facility during that time and following through, and trying to do their best at their job, and helping, like, with the riot, and then just, like, making sure that that I would make adjustments to the policy set in place to further better the policy set in place, so that way we can prevent riots from happening. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.